A small town in Maine, a loving mother vanishes in the dead of night. Police find her broken body just hours later. A husband weeping, children crying, a family destroyed. The crime seemed random, but as detectives pulled back the curtain, the truth was darker than anyone imagined. And what happened next shocked everyone. Ashford, Maine. Population barely 8,000. The kind of place where neighbors waved at each other, where doors were left unlocked. Monica Smith lived here her entire life. 32 years old, a schoolteacher. Described by friends as warm, generous, the kind of person who made every room brighter. She was married to Richard Wright. On the outside, a devoted husband, a hard-working mechanic. Together, they raised 2 young children in a modest white-painted house on Maple Lane. To the community, they looked like the picture of happiness. But beneath that image, cracks were beginning to show. We post daily. Subscribe so you never miss a case. Monica Smith's life looked ordinary from the outside. But in truth, it was the kind of ordinary people envy. She had stability. She had love. She had children who adored her. And she had a small-town community that trusted her. Every weekday morning, Monica rose before the sun. The kitchen light flickered on while the streets of Ashford were still dark. She brewed coffee, humming softly as she packed sandwiches into small plastic bags. Her daughter's hair ribbons were always perfectly tied. Her son's backpack zipped tight, ready for another day of school. Monica was the kind of mother who noticed the small things: a lost mitten, a forgotten homework sheet, a worried look on her child's face. Then she slipped into her own world. At Ashford Elementary, Monica was more than a teacher. She was a quiet force of kindness. She bent down to eye level with nervous first graders, calmed storms before they grew into tantrums, and celebrated every small success like it was a milestone. Parents called her irreplaceable. One described her as the heart of the school. But after the final bell, Monica's world shifted. She drove back to Maple Lane, to the modest 2-story home she shared with her husband Richard Wright. To neighbors, Richard was steady, hardworking, the kind of man who knew how to fix a car with his eyes closed. He'd built his reputation at the town's only auto garage, where customers trusted him with their vehicles and their wallets. Together, Richard and Monica looked like a couple holding it all together. 2 kids, a home, jobs that kept them afloat. They attended birthday parties, sat in pews on Sunday mornings, waved across grocery aisles. But cracks aren't always visible from the outside. Friends noticed subtle shifts. Monica's laugh, once easy and frequent, grew quieter. She stopped joining her colleagues for coffee after school. Book club gatherings turned into excuses. She smiled politely when asked about Richard but never lingered on the topic. At night, neighbors reported hearing arguments. Not constant, but sharp like thunder before a storm. Richard's voice would rise, low and forceful. Monica's voice, softer, pleading. Then silence. Windows closed. Curtains drawn. Life returning to its quiet rhythm by morning. Still, Monica tried to hold everything together. She loved her children too deeply to imagine leaving. She carried on with patience, as though waiting for a tide to turn. In her journal, later retrieved by detectives, she confessed unease. One line stood out, haunting in its simplicity. Sometimes I feel like I'm living with a stranger. On March 14, 2019, the day began as any other. Monica taught spelling words and multiplication tables. She graded papers with a red pen that bled across the margins. She laughed when her daughter showed her a crooked drawing. She kissed her son on the forehead as he drifted off to sleep. That evening, she prepared dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables. They ate together as a family. They laughed when juice spilled across the table. Everything felt almost normal. Almost. But beneath the roof of that little white house, tension simmered. Invisible, heavy, waiting for nightfall. Because when the lights went out, the perfect picture of the Smith family would shatter. The night of March 14th was unusually cold in Ashford. The streets were quiet, covered in a thin layer of frost that reflected the dim glow of streetlights. Inside the Smith home, silence had fallen after dinner. The children were asleep in their rooms, their small breaths steady against the hum of a bedside lamp. But downstairs, the calm shattered. Around midnight, neighbors reported hearing raised voices. A crash. A woman's cry, muffled but sharp. Then nothing. Curtains stayed drawn, but lights flickered on and off as though the house itself was restless. Richard would later tell investigators they argued over money. That Monica accused him of being distant. That he felt cornered. What he didn't admit, at least not at first, was how quickly that argument spiraled. In the struggle that followed, Monica fought. Detectives later found bruises along her arms that told a story of resistance. Fingernails chipped, skin scraped, marks of a desperate attempt to survive. Then, silence. At 2:17 a.m., a neighbor noticed something odd. Richard's pickup truck idling near the tree line behind the house. No headlights. No movement. Just the low rumble of the engine cutting through the cold. Suspicious, they called 911. When officers arrived minutes later, Richard answered the door. Barefoot. Shirtless. Sweating despite the chill in the air. His eyes darted, his words rushed. He claimed Monica had stormed out after their argument. Claimed she needed space. Claimed he had no idea where she went. But something didn't add up. His hands trembled. His knuckles bore fresh bruises. There was a faint chemical smell, bleach, sharp and stinging. And the children, peeking nervously from the staircase, whispered that their mother never said goodbye. By morning, search teams fanned out. Flashlights swept across frozen ground. Dogs barked as handlers pushed through dense pine trees. Volunteers prayed under their breath. And then, the discovery. Less than half a mile from the house, hidden beneath a tangle of branches, lay Monica Smith. Her face pale in the moonlight. Her hair tangled with leaves and dirt. She had been beaten. Strangled. Her body left hurriedly as though abandoned in panic. The scene was brutal. Officers stood in stunned silence. Some turned away, unable to look. A crime so violent, in a town so small. News spread fast. By sunrise, Ashford was buzzing with disbelief. Parents pulled children closer. Neighbors gathered in hushed circles, their voices trembling. She was such a good woman, one neighbor said, tears spilling down her cheeks. Another whispered, how could this happen here? How could this happen to her? Back at the house, Richard sat in the back of a patrol car. His expression unreadable. Not grief-stricken, not furious. Just blank. For detectives, the unease was undeniable. The scratches on his arms. The shifting stories. The bleach. And though they couldn't yet prove it, one chilling thought began to settle in. The killer wasn't a stranger. He was sitting right in front of them. The morning after Monica's body was found, Ashford no longer felt like the same town. Police tape wrapped around trees. Patrol cars lined the narrow road. Neighbors who once waved at Richard right now avoided his eyes. Detectives started where they always do, with the person closest to the victim. Richard insisted he was innocent. He told them Monica had left after an argument. He said she needed space, that maybe she went for a walk, that maybe someone else had hurt her. But his words were shaky. His story shifted with every retelling. Investigators combed the Smith home. In the garage, they noticed the sharp sting of bleach. Too strong. Too recent. On the floor, faint traces of blood missed by hurried cleaning. In the trash, fibers that matched the sweater Monica had been wearing that night. Still, detectives couldn't move too fast. They needed proof. So they dug deeper. Phone records revealed months of tension. Heated texts between Monica and Richard showed a pattern. Her pleading for calm, him responding with cold silences or sharp replies. One message, sent just 2 weeks before her death, read, "You scare me when you're like this." Then came a potential twist. A co-worker of Monica's stepped forward. She claimed Monica had confided in her about another man, someone who wouldn't leave her alone. Someone who made her uneasy. For a moment, suspicion shifted. Could Richard be telling the truth? Detectives tracked the man down. They questioned him for hours. He admitted he admired Monica, maybe too much, but swore he had nothing to do with her death. Security footage placed him at a diner across town the night of the murder. His alibi was airtight. The lead evaporated. Attention swung back to Richard. As investigators traced his finances, they uncovered something chilling. Just months before Monica's death, Richard had taken out a hefty life insurance policy, $500,000. Enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to suggest motive. But still, circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. The case needed a smoking gun. Forensic analysts worked tirelessly. They scoured Monica's body, her clothes, her nails. And there, beneath broken fingernails, they found what they needed: DNA. It matched Richard right. The evidence told a story no lie could erase. Monica had fought. She clawed, she scratched, she resisted until her last breath. And in doing so, she left behind proof of her killer. Detectives confronted Richard with the results. His face paled. His hands shook. He denied, then grew silent, then asked for a lawyer. By this point, the town of Ashford had already made up its mind. The husband who had once been trusted with everyone's cars was now believed to be the man who destroyed his own family. And with the DNA evidence secured, the case shifted from suspicion to certainty. But in court, certainty is never guaranteed. Richard still had his defense, and the trial ahead would test whether justice could hold against the weight of lies. The trial of Richard Wright began in October of 2020. For the small town of Ashford, it was the event that stopped time. Reporters lined the courthouse steps. Families who had once shared Sunday dinners with the Wrights now sat in silence, waiting to hear how the story would end. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Monica's parents sat in the front row, clutching tissues, eyes fixed on the man they once called son-in-law. Her children were too young to attend, but their absence hung in the room like a ghost. The prosecution wasted no time painting Richard as a man driven by control and greed. They displayed the text that revealed Monica's fear. They showed jurors the bleach-stained garage floor. They detailed the life insurance policy $500,000 that turned love into profit. And then came the most damning evidence of all, the DNA beneath Monica's fingernails. Proof that in her final moments she fought the man she trusted most. Jurors listened, some shifting uncomfortably as the details grew darker. The defense countered with a different story. They argued that Richard had snapped in the heat of an argument, that it wasn't premeditated murder, but a tragic accident fueled by stress, exhaustion, and emotion. They asked the jury to see a man who made a mistake, not a monster. But Richard himself betrayed his case. On the stand, his words circled back to himself: his ruined life, his lost reputation, his suffering. Rarely did he speak of Monica. Rarely did he express grief for her stolen future. Jurors noticed. 3 weeks passed. Testimony stacked. Evidence mounted. By the time the jury was sent to deliberate, the courtroom buzzed with only one question: how long would it take? It didn't take long. After less than 6 hours, the jury returned. Guilty first-degree murder. When the verdict was read, the room broke. Monica's mother sobbed, her cries echoing against the walls. Her father bowed his head, whispering prayers under his breath. Friends clutched each other's hands, tears streaming. Richard sat motionless, eyes forward, face blank. The sentence came swiftly: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside the courthouse, the town of Ashford seemed to exhale. Justice, though heavy, had been served. But justice doesn't bring back a mother. It doesn't heal the scars of children left behind. Today, Monica's students still remember her kindness. The community still lays flowers at a small memorial near the woods where her body was found. Her children are being raised by her parents, surrounded by love, but forever marked by loss. The Wright house on Maple Lane stands quiet, a reminder that behind white walls and smiling faces, darkness can grow unnoticed. The case closed with a verdict, but for those who loved Monica, closure never came. And for the rest of us, her story is a warning that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't lurk in the shadows of strangers, but within the people we trust the most. Richard Wright was not the kind of man neighbors feared. He blended in. He fixed cars. He waved politely. But behind closed doors, his behavior revealed patterns that psychologists recognize all too well. Experts described his actions as coercive control, a slow tightening of power within a relationship. Small criticisms that grew sharper. Isolation from friends. Arguments that escalated into intimidation. Monica's journal entries confirmed this pattern. She wrote of fear, of living with a stranger. Psychologists say men like Richard often thrive on control. When that control begins to slip, when a partner shows independence, pulls away emotionally, or threatens to leave, the abuser's identity feels threatened. To Richard, Monica wasn't just his wife. She was proof of his control. And losing that control was unthinkable. The life insurance policy added another layer. Experts noted how financial gain is often a secondary motive in domestic homicides. To Richard, Monica's life held not only emotional weight, but monetary value. That cold calculation suggested premeditation, not a sudden snap, but a decision rooted in greed. During questioning, Richard displayed another classic red flag: lack of empathy. His tears focused on his own suffering, his fear of prison, his ruined reputation. Rarely did he mention Monica. Rarely did he acknowledge the pain he caused her children. Psychologists point out that this self-centered response is common among offenders with narcissistic traits. They grieve for themselves, not their victims. In the end, Richard's actions aligned with what experts call intimate partner homicide, one of the most predictable yet most overlooked crimes. Studies show women are far more likely to be killed by a partner than by a stranger. Monica Smith became part of that tragic statistic. The psychology behind Richard's crime wasn't mysterious. It was chillingly familiar. Control, possession, greed, and a complete disregard for the life he destroyed. Monica Smith wanted only the simple things to teach, to love, to raise her children in peace. But her life was stolen by the very man who vowed to protect her. Her story is not just about one family in Ashford, Maine. It's a reminder of how fragile trust can be. How the face of danger isn't always a stranger in the dark sometimes, it's the person sitting across the dinner table. Justice was served. But justice does not replace a mother's embrace. It doesn't bring back bedtime stories, birthday candles, or the sound of her laughter echoing in a classroom. And that's the weight Monica's children will carry forever. Subscribe and watch our next case. What do you think truly drove Richard right over the edge? Was it greed or something far more sinister? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.